we cooking? We're cooking. All right. Okay, so your homework assignment, last time we introduced index of and practiced with char at and the length method. So, you know, we've been introducing these various methods that belong to the string class. So our homework assignment was to write 3 different functions that are basically all the same function, right? And once, I think I mentioned, once you figure one of them out, the other 2 should be pretty easy. But initially you had to kind of go through that logic of how do you solve this problem in terms of the values you have sitting in front of you. Okay, so, and I also gave you the hint that the index of method might be very helpful here in solving the problem. Specifically, and I think I made it bold, and this guy right here, that whole -1 thing is a pretty important aspect of solving this problem. All right, so anybody figure out the index of trick you could have used to solve this problem? Or am I going to see some pretty verbose if statements? If it's an A, if it's an E, if it's an I, O, U, upper and lowercase. Although I tell you you could do just lowercase, or did I say you had to do both? Or I didn't say.
You didn't say.
All right, good. Then you have, you know, all the letters of the alphabet, consonants. So am I going to see some pretty big if statements? Scary, 90-line long if statement. Go ahead.
So you can make a string that's just, so if you're doing digits, you can make a string that's just digits and have that checked with the string you're taking as a parameter.
Yep. So if we're removing the vowels, what we might do is we might create a string here called vowels and set this guy equal to A, E, I, O, U. So all the upper and lowercase vowels. Now I can ask if an individual character is in that string. By checking index of, and if it returns a -1, it's not in there. If it returns something other than a -1, it was in there, right? So the other thing we need to consider to remove the vowels, we want to, since strings are read-only, all right? We can get things out of strings, but we cannot modify the existing string. We can't say I want to remove the character at position 3 in a string. So one way to think about remove vowels might be something like this. Keep non-vowels. All right, that is, we're going to build a brand new string. So whenever we need to modify a string, the red flag goes up saying we're probably going to build a brand new string. Are we missing a bunch of people today?
Zach's gone, Michael's gone.
Are they like doing? Oh, you just know they're gone. Oh. All right. Somebody take out a piece of paper, just one, and put your name on it. Pass it around. We'll do a free quiz. It's a good deal, right? Show up to class, get a free quiz.
Would that count against you? You do that on Friday?
What's up?
Would that count against you? You do that on Friday?
Well, I think it's an excused absence if it's. Do you have a chance of winning?
Yeah.
Are you lying?
No, but anything to that conference, so it's not like you're competing with like Oshkosh or Whitewater.
Oshkosh and Whitewater are considered what, powerhouses?
Yeah.
Oh, because that doesn't sound like that much of a powerhouse to me. Oshkosh?
Well, at least for like throwing. I don't know about
No.
running. You know one of the maintenance guys, Pete Delzer?
I probably have seen him. Yeah.
He went there, and he'll like coach for us every so often. He's 9th in the country right now out of everyone in the country. Weight throw.
Oh, it's called weight throw?
Yeah, big ball, small straight.
I didn't even know that was. I've heard of shot put. I've heard of discus.
You know hammer?
Yeah, I've heard of hammer.
Weight throw is like the indoor equivalent. It's a lot shorter and heavier, so it doesn't go as far as you can throw it inside.
Okay, so
Well, it's the same concept.
gotcha. But instead of throwing the hammer, but the hammer has like sharp stuff on it, right? Really?
Just like a ball on a string. Wider.
Oh, that's that.
I do not do javelin.
Is there an indoor javelin,
No.
or is that just called a shooting range? All right, so your competition right now is indoors, and it's the weighted throw, which is equivalent to the hammer with a shorter string, so it doesn't go as far because it's a shorter string and it's heavier.
Yeah.
But everybody's competing with the same thing. So now you have a better chance of ripping your shoulder.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
There's some funny videos. Like people like they won't let go. It's like going up here and just like hold them to the ground.
Or somebody breaks their leg as it swings around. That'd be awesome. I would just sit there and laugh. Just laugh and laugh. So that's not going to happen to you? All right, but you see, you're guaranteeing a victory.
I'm not guaranteeing.
Well, if you want to be excused from a possible quiz, victory should be guaranteed. All right.
I'll take it.
Let's see. Oh, so in any case, we're keeping non-vowels. We're building a brand new string. Okay? So, we're going to go ahead and get our string for our answer. We'll call this guy answer, set equal to empty string. And we're going to ultimately return our answer here. And then what we do in between, this will be our actual logic here. So we do some setup, then we do some logic, and ultimately return the variable that we had to store our answer in. All right? So what are we going to do? Inside here, we're going to go ahead and do our stock loop that goes through every character in a string. For int I is equal to 0, I is less than s dot length. That is the length of the string that was passed into this method. Then I plus plus. Okay. So this will take us on a voyage for I being 0 all the way up to s dot length minus 1. Each time through, we want to determine, should we keep the current character? Should we keep the current character? Now, we want to get rid of vowels. That means we only want to keep things that are not in our vowel string. That is, we only want to keep things for which index of returns a -1. All right, so if vowels dot index of, and the character we're going to pass it is s dot char at I, is equal to -1. If the current character we're looking at is not found in my string filled with vowels, then we want to keep it. So we'll say answer is equal to answer concatenated with s dot char at I. And ultimately, we'll return our answer. Make sense? Go through every element in our string. Ask the question each time through. Is the current character one of these vowels? That is it equal? Oh, is the current character not one of these vowels? That is, when I look it up using index of, did it return a -1? Then if it is not a vowel, let's go ahead and keep it in my answer. Ultimately, after I've checked every single character in the string and only kept the non-vowels, I'll return answer. All right, so let's go ahead and test this guy. So we'll say system, and remember, this guy is meant to return a string with all the vowels removed, not display it. Return a string. Now we'll go ahead and display it. So we'll say system.out.println, and we'll say driver.remove vowels, and we'll pass this guy, we'll pass it S for our starting test. Okay, remove vowels, returns a string. It has static in front. What does it mean when we see a method definition that has the keyword static in front? Who owns that method? Class owns the method. How do we call that method? Yep, using the name of the class in which the method was defined. So class name.method name. So this is a class method. It's named remove vowels. It takes a single string as a parameter, and it returns a string as a result. I'm going to call it here using the name of the class in which it was defined. I'm going to pass it a single string. In this case, I'm passing it the string that boils down to hello. This guy right here will ultimately boil down to the answer that, in our hope is that it's hello with the vowels removed. And then we'll print this out. Let's go ahead and run this. And there's HLL. So that string with the vowels removed. Make sense? Okay. Now, we can take this exact same logic and apply it to our remove consonants. Change our vowel string to be all the consonants. Now, what we're going to do to make this a little bit more generic, because one of the advantages of being able to write methods is that we can write something once and use it multiple times. So might it be handy for us in this particular case to write a generic method that takes in a string as well as another string of the characters we want to remove. And then we can call that function from within each of our other functions. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to say static string remove chars. We have our string s, and then we have our string chars to remove. All right, and we're going to go ahead and steal this code from down here. Okay, and this is no longer going to be vowels. Instead, we want to go through and check against chars to remove. So if chars to remove dot index of the current character we're looking at is equal to -1, then keep the character. All right, so this is a generic function that we can pass a string to, as well as the characters we want to remove from that string. And it will go through and do the exact same logic as we just did, but generically. So then what do we do inside of remove vowels? We'll go ahead and say driver dot remove chars, passing it s and passing it A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U. And we'll ultimately return that value. So here's remove vowels. All remove vowels does is it passes the string that was passed to it on, along with the string containing the vowels, to this function up here we just wrote, remove chars, that goes through and keeps things that are not in that list. Make sense? So now we can use this same function. Let's just test this real quick so you see it works the same. So there's our same output. So now we can use that same function for remove consonants. All right. This is the string I hate typing. I'm going to go through and type in the entire alphabet twice, then remove the vowels. All right. Well, actually, we could have done that in terms of our remove chars. We could have passed the entire alphabet to remove chars, passing it vowels. So it gives us the alphabet minus the chars, or minus the vowels, rather. And then use that as our input to the next guy. Would have been an interesting use of our tool. All right, so we'll call remove chars, passing it whatever string was passed into this guy, along with a list of all the consonants. And that guy should remove all consonants. And finally, remove digits is a easier one to handle. Make sense? So after you solve it for one, solving it for the other ones is pretty easy as long as you figured out the index of trick. If you didn't and you did the monolithic if statements, not necessarily incorrect, just a pretty long program with a lot of cutting and pasting. How many of you did the giant if statement version? I'm assuming several of you. That's okay. Well, not for you, but yeah. Well, I mean, weighted, what did you call it? Weighted weight throw. Yeah, I mean, amateur weight thrower should do better than that.
I'm better at weight throw than shot put.
Than who?
Than shot put. So I'm a little above.
Why is that?
I don't know. Like get better practice.
I mean, doesn't weight throw like really involve like maximizing your rotations?
Yeah, which I think that.
Where shot put's a lot more of like timing and right.
Yeah, with the weight throw, like I got longer arms, so I think that helps. I have a bigger orbit when I'm spinning, so more distance.
So it seems like with my orbital mass, that's an interesting way of putting it, that I would be pretty good at weighted throw if I like had it learns the technique, right? Because that's kind of how golf works for me. As long as I can like turn around my body, I can. There's some stuff happening at the where that doesn't work out so well for the hurdles. The size works against me.
Gravity is turned on.
Seriously, it sucks. It's like God's cruel joke. I'd be so good at hurdles on the moon. Seriously, it would be awesome. I'd probably be able to walk on the moon pretty easily. Everybody else is kind of floating around a little bit. It'd be almost like on the moon, I would be like somebody who weighed like 170 pounds. Same like normal gait.
I haven't seen 170
Yeah, I don't know. When did I last? See, I used to play close to professional tennis. True story. And I broke my back. So then I bulked up. So
You became an amateur tennis player?
no, not even that. I became somebody who couldn't walk for a little bit. Now I fish and play golf. Different, but I no shot put or whatever the other stupid stuff you do is. Weight throw. That's right. The indoor javelin. No indoor javelin. There's.
I couldn't think of a better name. Like, what kind of heavy called a weight throw?
That's okay, I guess. But I'm expecting a victory. All right. So, any questions on this? Understand the index of kind of the power of index of, and now do you believe me? Why I bolded and made larger the -1 thing there? All right. So it was a little foreshadowing. Yeah, I mean, and you know, computer programming is kind of like that. You know, we go back. First of all, one thing I don't want you to do is I don't want you to memorize this idea and think of this as the index of trick. All right, we solve every problem in terms of the tools we have laying in front of us, whether it's programming or in real life. In real life, you guys have a lot more tools because you have a lot more practice. Programming, we have a little tiny container of tools right now. Okay, and we're going to get better. Better over time. So now, when you're considering how you can solve a problem with the tools that are currently sitting in your toolbox, you want to think about what each of those little wrenches does. And index of happens to have this this little thing, and it might be when you're solving problems with strings, you might consider the nature of index of versus the nature of char at. They're kind of inverses of each other, right? Index of says where something is, where's the first occurrence of something, and char at says give me the value at this position. All right, those guys are inverses of each other. Everybody heard what I just said? That's going to be handy soon. That would be another bolded hint. So, okay, they're inverses of each other. Index of and char at. Okay, now let's go this route. What I want to do next? Let's do this next. Converting strings to integers. Oh, I already put it on there. So for instance, if I have the string 124, all right, and I want to add 5 to it to give me a 129. With it in that format, what's my output going to be if I were to try to do this operation? What will this boil down to? Go ahead. Exactly like this. This is exactly what it's going to look like. What will this boil down to as I exactly have it written? 1, 2, 4, 5. Yep, this will glue them together because at least one side of the plus sign is a string. Therefore, it's going to treat this guy as concatenation, not as addition. All right. So now I'm saying I'd like it to treat it as addition, which means that I'm going to need this guy to no longer be a string. I need to figure out how do I turn the string 124 into the number 124. Now, unfortunately, it's very easy for us to do it the other direction. If I have the number 124 and I want to add 5 to it, and I want this ultimately to be 1, 2, 4, 5, if that's what I want it to become, I need one of these guys to become a string. Correct? Well, so let's just take the 124 as an example. How do I turn the number 124 into the string 124? Using only what you know right now. So we're searching through our little toolbox and deciding what's in there. We have another little simple in presence but powerful quote trick that we can use to do this. Anybody have a suggestion on how we can turn the number 124 into the string 124? This whole section that we're dealing with right now is on some things we call string manipulation. And I like to say Java is a string-based language. So if we can get something into the, think of strings, they're very elastic. If we can get something into the format of a string, we can kind of do anything we want with it. All right, and we're gonna see that more and more as we go on. But how do I turn 124 into the string 124? Couldn't I do that? Wouldn't that become that? This is the empty string, that is double quote, nothing in there, concatenated with 124. As long as one side of the plus sign is a string, it treats that as concatenation. And it's just going to glue this number onto this string, producing a brand new string, which is the string 124. Make sense? So pretty easy. Okay, so another little trick to put into your toolbox. If you need to turn something into a string, the empty string is your friend. Empty string will force the plus sign to become a concatenation operator, and it doesn't add any extra crap to your result because there's nothing in it, but it is still a string. It just happens to be a string of length 0. But now, if we want to do that, it's not so easy. Now, I'll give you a little foreshadowing here, first of all. There is something built into the Java language that will do that for us. So it's almost as easy. But unfortunately for us, we don't know how to do that yet. Okay? So we're not allowed to use that until we appreciate the amount of work it's doing for us. All right. So having said that, if I have the number, let's just go back here. If I have the number 124 as a string and I want to convert it into 124 as an int, how would I go about doing this? Right now, the hint I'll give you is you learned how to do this probably in 1st or 2nd grade, probably 1st grade. We all had 1st grade in here? Some point? All right. A couple times. I have some good 1st grade stories. I got hit 3 times in 1st grade. Do teachers still spank people? Oh, man, my teacher, she loved doing that. There was another kid in my class, his name was Steve Scott. And when he finally got paddled in 1st grade, I remember this vividly. She looks at him and says, Steve, I've been waiting to do this for a long time. I mean, those are the types of people that like make it on the news now, right? That was like just normal back then. And she takes you out in the hall, and you come out of the first grade classroom, you turn right, go about 30 yards down the hall, left in this little closet where they have the wooden thing with the holes cut in. It's like just hanging. There's a single light bulb. Dude, it was traumatic. Seriously.
Yeah, do that now, you're fired and there's a lawsuit.
Yeah. Just beats the crap out of you and then drags you back to the classroom bawling. Yeah, and she enjoyed it. 3 times. One of the times was eating crayons. I was hungry. Another time I was we were doing spelling tests and we exchanged papers, and I was grading the paper for the girl sitting next to me. And she had perfect handwriting and I didn't have handwriting. So I changed, it was the word cat. I changed one of her letters to something else, just horrible. Nobody would have thought that was her handwriting. So I got hit for that. And I don't even remember what the last one was. I think she just wanted to. Yeah, but it was 3 times. Then they bring your mom in after school to sit there and watch the teacher yell at you. It's the way it used to work in the good old days. Really? But I found a way around that in college when we get to the upper division classes, because I'm not allowed to hit students. But if another student hits a student and I look the other way, nothing I can do about that, right? So I usually appoint a student in the classroom to be the bearer of the chair. So a couple years ago it was Joey Welkley. Yeah, so he would pick up a chair and smash another student with a chair whenever they got out of line. He lost so much weight. He would just fall over now. Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah, it's a joke. Makes me feel bad about myself. We used to be like, brothers in obesity. Now he's like slender. Yeah, he has to wear a coat outside. I'm like an Eskimo. I bring my blubber coat with me everywhere I go. All right. What are we talking about? How do we get onto that? Oh, first grade. First grade math. That was the segue. All right. So in first grade, you learned how to convert this into this in terms of mathematical problem solving. Tell me about the number 124. Tell me about that number. Okay. True statement. But isn't this the number 100 plus the number 20 plus the number 4? Right? It's made up of some pieces, right? This 4 is in the ones place. This 2 is in the tens place. This 1 is in the hundreds place. That makes sense? Similarly, this 4 is in the 10 to the zeros place. 10 to the 0th power is 1. This 2 is in the 10 to the 1's place. That's 10. This 1 is in the 10 to the 2's place, which is 100 to the power of 2. Okay, so 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times itself, or 10, just 10 is 10, and then 10 to the 0 power is 1. Okay, so this is actually 100 times, 1 times 100 plus 2 times 10 plus 4 times 1. Make sense? Okay. So, if we had a loop that went from the ones place to the tens place to the hundreds place to the thousands place, so on and so forth, that would take us through all of the places themselves, right? So as we walk, if we turn this guy into a string, let's start off with that. So I already have the string 124, and I'm going to walk this string from the end towards the beginning. At the end of that string towards the beginning of that string. Each time I'm going to keep track of the current place. This is the ones place. Times 10 is the tens place. times 10 is the hundredths place. All right, so each time through the loop, I'm going to multiply the current place value by 10. And I'm going to build a running total out of that. All right, so when I say s.charat, in this case 2, this is bucket 0, bucket 1, bucket 2. So when I say s.charat 2, so if this guy is s, string s equals that, then I'm going to say s.charat, in this case 2. What will that boil down to? What is s.charat 2 in this current code? This is not a trick question. This is S. This is bucket 0, bucket 1, bucket 2. Wouldn't that be what bucket 2 is? So what should I replace this question mark with? Don't do the math yet. This doesn't even exist. 4. In what format? Okay, no double quotes? All right. So here, we'll write it this way. It's still wrong. All right, so tell me how to fix it. You wish it was that. Not quite that. Remind me, what is the function definition? What is the function header for the charat method? Doesn't have static on it, right? It's an instance method owned by the string class. So it's called charat. It takes in an int index as a parameter. And what kind of animal does it return? Well, it is giving us the char at a position. So what's the return type of this guy? You wished it was an int. It's a char. Okay, so that guy gives us a char, which means that this guy looks like that. Make sense? Okay. Not quite the number 4. In this case, it's the char, character 4. So now I need to learn how to convert that into that. Another little tool I need to have. How do I convert the char 4 into the integer 4 using only the tools that we have available to us right now? That is to say, I want to write a function called char to int, and this guy should return the integer version of the char parameter. How would I do that? Jump back here. The parameter would look like this. I want it to spit out something like this, using only the tools that you have available to you right now. What do you think? Good. Oh, you don't want to, nothing? You got nothing? Well, I already have a char. We're not even dealing with a string. This is our whole world right here. I'm looking at something like this, and I would convert it into something like this. Let's not overthink this right off the bat. If I'm looking at the char 0, what number would that be? 0, right? If I'm looking at the char 1, what number would that be? The integer 1. Char 2 would be the integer 2. Char 3 would be the integer 3. All the way up to char 9. I wouldn't have characters bigger than 9, correct? I would have 0 through 9 because we're dealing with a base 10 number here. So couldn't I just write a bunch of if statements? Couldn't I say if the char that you passed me was the char 0, return an integer 0. The char you passed me was the char 1, return the integer 1. Wouldn't that work? Okay. So rule of thumb here, don't sit there and come up with some sort of genius solution when you can just write a bunch of if statements to solve this in a worst case scenario. Okay, but we happen to learn something that's directly applicable to this today. We can use the index of trick. If I have a string containing all the chars, what position in that string does the char 0 live? This is bucket 0, bucket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are the indexes of that string. What index does 0 live? Does 0 live in? Bucket 0. What index does char 7 live in? 7. So couldn't we just return that? Here's the string containing all of our numbers, 0 through 9. In this case, we're assuming that if you're calling char to int, you're passing me a char that is convertible to an int. You're not passing me a question mark or the letter B or something like that. You're giving me something that is convertible to an int. We can certainly check for that, but we'll assume we're using our functions appropriately here. So I'm going to just say, here is my string literal of all of the digits, 0 through 9. That's a collection of chars. I'm going to look up whatever char you passed me in this string, and it's going to return for me the first index where it finds that char. The first place it finds a 0 should be at bucket 0. The first place it finds a 1 should be at bucket 1. First place it finds an 8 should be at bucket 8. So on and so forth. Understand that? So there's a trick we have at our disposal now. And not so much a trick, we just glued a couple of our things together and solved the problem. So now we know how to convert a char to an int. What we're ultimately trying to do here is convert a string to an int. And that's what we ultimately want to do. We'll put our little placeholder there for right now so Java doesn't complain. Oh, except it's not returning that. We'll just have it return a -1 for the moment, since I've advertised it returns an int and Java wants me to return something. So this is ultimately what we want to do. And I'm going to pass in some string here. And that string is going to contain something like, so this guy will be converts S, which is a string representation of an int into an integer, well, let's say an int representation. So for example, 124 would become 124. That's what we would be doing inside of there. All right, so we have our string S here. We've now determined how we can get a particular char and turn it into an integer, right? So let's write we're going to do string to int algorithm. So this says walk our string backwards from the last legal position to bucket 0. All right, so that's one thing we need to do. Before we do that, we need to remember what place we're currently looking at. So for example, if we're looking at 124, this was the ones place, times 10 is the tens place, times 10 is the hundreds place. So we need to keep track of the current place in our string. initialize a variable to hold the current place to 1. Okay? Then we're going to walk our string backwards from the last legal position all the way up to bucket 0. We can say including bucket 0 here, because that is a legal position, right? And what are we going to do each time through that loop? Well, we need to convert the current char into an int, multiply that by the current place, and add it to a running total, which means that we need to have our running total here. Initialize a variable to hold the running total to 0. Ultimately, after we've gone through our entire string from the end towards the beginning, converting each char along the way into an int, multiplying that int by the current place, and adding it to our running total, not forgetting to multiply, well here let's say change the value of place to be 10 times itself. So place goes from 1 to 10 to 100. Okay? So each time through doing that, once we're done with that loop, we will return the final answer, which is stored in our running total. Make sense? All right, so your homework assignment for Wednesday is to take this English representation of our algorithm, knowing that we've already written this part right here to convert a char to an int, and write our method string to int. Make sense? Questions, comments, concerns, bribes? All right, I will see everybody on Wednesday. Who has the quiz sheet, really? Oh, okay, I'll grab it.
Speaking of first grade, I remember